Hi, my name is Butch Delaney, and welcome to the series Reconciling Science and the Bible. I'm glad you're watching this video. Today's lesson deals with what happens when you die. Many people believe in life after death. Many believe in no afterlife, and no one on this side of death can be fully certain. Or can you? It is a sure bet that every one of us either have or will have questions about what happens at or upon our death. All of us are mortal, meaning that we have a body that ages and eventually will die. One day our existence will cease. What happens when the body dies? Well, there are many thoughts about this. The early Mesopotamians believed that there was life after death, but their view of that life after death was pretty bleak. All people, good or bad, would die and their souls would go down to the deep, dark caverns underground and continue to live. It was a very dark and misty place, and all people, regardless of social status, wealth, and so forth, would gather here after life ceased for them on earth. Kings and peasants, priests and ordinary people would gather, would sit in darkness every hour of every day, and they would eat clay and dust. Not a very pleasant place to be. The early Egyptians also believed in an underworld. The souls of every person would one day go there and eventually be reborn, only to repeat this process over and over and over. Now, they also believed in justice, and depending upon your life on earth, you would be meted out the proper afterlife existence, either reward for a life well lived or punishment for a life misused. Mummification was a principal practice that gave the soul a body that it would live in after it went to the afterlife. The Jews, on the other hand, had many famous individuals in the course of their existence, all the way from Abraham through the prophets and up to the time the nation of Israel fell. And these people talked quite a bit about the afterlife. Enoch, for example, was the first man mentioned, and it's said of him that when he died, he walked with God. And the implications were that the man Enoch was worthy of this happening upon his death. David would later come along and similarly testify that when you die, if you were evil, you would be like the beasts that perish. But if you are righteous, God would redeem you from the grave. But not a lot of description is given to what that redemption from the grave looked like. Daniel pretty much said that all of us, every one of us, all who die, will be awakened as if from sleep and will gather before God. So he preached a gospel of resurrection from the dead. The great prophets, following Daniel's footsteps, preached that when you die, your soul will be gathered to your people and would go to be with all of them in some place in the afterlife. You would be with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for example. The great prophet Isaiah also said very clearly that you will live after you die. And it appears from this reading that you will be born again for the purpose of joy when you are reborn from the grave. Now, here are some things that you hear today. We'll take a brief look at these beliefs, and there are many. The first belief is atheism. These people believe there is no theistic being, and all that exists are those who live and eventually die. In atheism, your being will be halted, and there will be nothing on the other side of the pale. You die, and there's nothing to follow. So you might as well live it up while you're here. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. There's a group of, or possibly several groups, who believe in reincarnation. It is supposed that your soul will be repurposed time after time after time. And death is not the end, rather it's always the beginning of a new life. This group believes that each of us have had the opportunity of living several lives before in this world. And death gives you the option of living it yet again, being reborn to an entirely new set of parents with no recollection of your past life and with the opportunity to live your 10 years under completely different circumstances. And we're all familiar with Christianity's perspective. All of us live only once and we die, and part of us, our soul, will live again, but will live in either one of two places: heaven, a place of unimaginable delight to be with our Lord forever, or hell, a fiery place of torture. Now, what determines our destination? The choices we make as we live our lives on earth. Some follow the path paved by Jesus and live a good moral life, and some follow other paths and live lives with no thought at all of the afterlife. The Hindu version of reincarnation supposes that death is not the end but the beginning of a new life. Yet, the life you live following death is not guaranteed to be a life as a human. You may be reincarnated to be a bug, or a snake, or a bird, or a fish, but your spirit will live on after you die. The form or shape that it takes, of course, may be different. Buddhists also believe in reincarnation, but their belief is that your spirit will return in the form of another human being, and you will live life in different forms as different humans, and you will do that for all eternity. There is a very pessimistic group that says that there is nothing after this life. In fact, this is not life anyway. You're already dead, but you just don't know it. There is no hope for an afterlife, no hope for a rebirth. And why live life at all? Why live a good life? Why not live a bad life? In the end, it doesn't matter. In fact, you are already dead. Now, the early Greeks, Plato and the others, believed that when you die, your soul would be brought before a judge, and you would be determined to go to either a place of rest and peace and eternal happiness, or to a place of eternal punishment. And it depends all upon the scale of good versus bad that you have done in your life. There are some who are not certain, but who want to be prepared in any event. They've decided to place their current bodies into cryogenic suspension upon their death. Their hope is that someday, some technology will progress to the point where they will be again able to be revived from the deep, cold sleep to live again. They're banking on future technology to bring them back to life at some point in the near or distant future. Very high science. Then there's a group that identifies as biocentric, who believe that all of us have consciousness. We are awake and we are aware of our existence, and we're aware of others around us and very aware of nature and so forth. They believe that when you die, your consciousness will live on and will be joined with all of the other consciousness that is in the universe, and that is no longer constrained to a biological entity. Now, the idea of solipsism is that you exist, but all the others you interface with on a daily basis are only imaginary, only in your mind. You alone are it. All the others are just imaginary beings. Now, I'm not sure about whether this means there's somewhere only one of us really exists, who's really alive, and all the rest of us are merely imaginary. This is a fairly odd belief. Then there are some who believe that there are a number of superior beings who are dreaming all of our existences. What we perceive as being actual, factual life is only a dream of some other sentient being. Nothing as we know it is real. Everything we know is simply imaginary, simply a very long dream. We're probably familiar with the nihilist belief that all that matters is what we experience on this side of life. Because when we die, we are gone. There is no life after death, only eternal nothingness. And finally, there is a group who believe that a place of eternal joy and satisfaction in all things await the faithful. Everyone will have 72 virgins to live with after this life. So, which of these do you believe? Now, it would be expected that if you have read the Bible, you would believe that your spirit will one day spend eternity in heaven, worshiping God, or you will spend the rest of eternity in hell, suffering because of your life choices. Why do you believe what you believe? How sure are you of your eventuality? How sure that you uh, will have the promises that were made in the Bible, that those promises are true? Now, the Old Testament doesn't seem to be in line with the current thinking in the New Testament. There's not much mention of good things happening after death to good people, and there's not much mention about bad things happening eternally to bad people. The concept of Sheol in the Old Testament doesn't really have the same sense as what we read about in the New Testament for either good people or bad people. A lot of what we believe about this is in line with what the Greeks taught, that you would have a different life after death, all of it based upon your actions. Here are some pictures of the afterlife in the Old Testament. There's a place that Job called the depths below, and the same is mentioned in Psalms. But Isaiah only promises a fiery finish to those who deserve it. Their souls will be in eternal flames. So, given the Greek teaching that humans are a two-part being, we know that there is a body and we know that there is a soul. The question is, which one is in the driver's seat? Are you a soul with a body or a body that has a soul? The Greeks said that we are all souls having a physical existence, emphasis on the soul. We're not a body with a soul, we are souls having a bodily experience. The soul lives on after you die. Jesus said that there is an afterlife of torment for evil people and a place of quiet repose for the faithful. Both the Hebrews and the Greeks believed in a three-part body. There's the physical part, that's our flesh and our blood. There's the soul. In Greek, it is psyche. In Hebrew, it is nephesh, which is your knowledge, your mind, and your being. And then there's the spirit. In Greek, it would be pneuma, and in Hebrew, it would be ruah, which is literally your breath. So when Adam was created for existence, God breathed into the mud man that he had made. So there are different things on earth that have different makeups. Plants and trees, for example, only have a body with no soul or spirit. Animals have a body and a spirit, but no soul. Only a man has all three: body, soul, and spirit. Is there any doubt in the New Testament that there is a place called hell? I mean, Jesus mentioned it, but doesn't elaborate on it much, just a fiery place. In the King James Version, three words get translated into one word meaning hell. There was Hades, similar to Sheol in the Old Testament, where the good and the bad congregate. And then at some point, souls go either into a place of torment and anguish, or they go into a place of rest and peace and comfort, a place of paradise. So what happens at death? Christians generally believe this: the body goes into the grave and eventually returns to the earth. The spirit leaves the body upon death, and it is no longer a force of life for anyone. The soul, which is your personality, your mind, your intellect, goes to Hades to wait judgment, and after judgment will go to either heaven or hell. Well, here it is in picture form. I must say that some Christians believe this arrangement. Your spirit, literally your breath, leaves your body. Your soul goes either to paradise or Gehenna, depending upon the life you live. But this is not the final judgment. It's only a temporary holding place. For at one point, those living in either place will be judged, and then they will go either to heaven or to hell. Here are some reasons, perhaps, to believe in an afterlife. First of all, the Bible tells us that Christ died, yet he came back. And all cultures have some form of life after the current physical one. Many people who have experienced near-death events have come back to tell us of different realms, and some believe in ghosts or poltergeists that are living in this world. And in Jesus' day, some believed that the spirits of dead people inhabited the bodies of living people at times. Now, some of you are familiar with Ravi Zacharias, who tells us not to fear death. It is the one experience where we will leave everything behind, and then we will live with everything that we are. Billy Graham tried to get us to believe that we should not worry about death. We choose to live a life where we simply don't think about it. Fear and denial are the two ways the world views life after death. But he tells us it's going to be a glorious spiritual pilgrimage that we should all eagerly anticipate. A recent Pew poll attempted to break the question into two parts. Do you believe there's a place called heaven, and do you believe there's a place called hell? 72% of us in the poll agreed that there is a place called heaven, but only 58% believed that there is a place called hell. Now, here are some scriptures, some biblical thoughts that come from the Bible about heaven. It's described there as a beautiful, eternal, a perfect cube, very large city with walls to keep people out, perhaps. It has gates and a strong foundation. It is a new heaven where the tree of life lives. Did you know that Jesus talked more about hell than any other character in the Bible? He gives a literal view of a place of fire and punishment. The Sadducees, on the other hand, believe that when you die, that's it. There is no resurrection. The Pharisees believe that when you die, you will be resurrected. And Islam teaches that heaven is a literal place where your fate in the afterlife depends upon the life you lived on earth. Jesus did speak of a place of eternal punishment, and he called it Gehenna. Now, Gehenna was a literal place on earth at their time, and it gave a pretty good picture of how bad that place will be in the afterlife. You see, Gehenna was the junkyard and the trash heap for the city of Jerusalem. It was always on fire, and that fire helped keep the stink down. And only the poorest of the poor would ever search for food in Gehenna. So here it is shown just to the west of the old city. Literally, you could walk to the edge of the city and drop your refuse off over the walls into the trash pile that was Gehenna, or the Hinnom Valley, and it was always on fire. Wastewater from it flowed at one point down into the Kidron Valley and the river that was there. So here are a list of relevant scriptures related to the idea of an afterlife. Many times, the end of all ends was discussed in both the Old and the New Testaments. And all of these scriptures would justify the belief that when you die, your soul will continue to live, and at some point it will go on to eternal bliss or eternal punishment.